We'll move on now to our top 5 wide receivers. This one's really interesting. Again, me and Charlie have very similar lists. I think we generally are pretty similar when it comes to scouting in the draft. This list, I think, will maybe shock some people a little bit more.
I think maybe.
But at R1, I have Quentin Johnson.
I got Jordan Addison
at 1. So for Quentin Johnson, I think this dude, and again, I was looking at the combine size. I don't understand if these the teams when they measure them just give them more height because they're always shorter when it comes to the combine.
I think combine he clocked in at 6'2".
Yeah, I think it was 6'3". Or whatever, 6'2", 6'3", but like 6'2", 6'4" is like 6'2" is like, all right, yeah, good size. 6'4" is like great big receiver, Mike Evans type. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Quentin Johnson, I'm just a massive fan of him. I think the size to me and what so many people were talking about, like if he had a better quarterback than Max Duggan, this dude would have had he had 1,000-something yards. He would have like 1,800
yards.
He would have had like 1,800 yards. Like Max Duggan, when you look at the tape, he missed so many times where Quentin Johnson was wide open. This guy is just a mismatch, and I think he will be super successful. He's one of those guys where he has the size and just the ability to be really good after the catch, which you just don't see for guys of his size. And then again, like the rating for him, really good route running. His release is very good. Good hands. Like he doesn't have many holes in his game. I think it just depends on if a team wants Quentin Johnson. It depends. Like there are very short receivers in this class, and there are Quentin Johnsons who are big, and I think it kind of depends on what the scheme fit is. But like for our Giants, I would absolutely love for them to get Quentin Johnson. I think he would be a fantastic fit for the Ravens. And my pro comp was Demaryius Thomas and like Mike Evans, I guess, just because of that sheer size. Where I tend to compare a lot of the big receivers coming to the draft to Mike Evans. Those go up jump ball receivers, but he was very good. I think the one knock was, we were hoping for a sub 4.4 at the combine. I think he ran a 4.4 something, which still isn't bad for someone of his size. But I think if he ran that 4.3 in the 4.3s, he would have been the first receiver taken. But again, so that's what I have with Quentin Johnson. But I guess we'll go. Do you want to just go based on my list, and then you can just talk about where you have them? It's just easier to do. So
Quentin Johnson, he's my wide receiver 2, and he's a close second to Jordan Addison. I actually have them with the same grade. I just prefer Jordan Addison. For me, Quentin Johnson, the knocks are
what's your grade for him?
They're both sitting at 89.
Oh, okay. See, I have a 94 for Quentin Johnson, which I think is high. I'm going to review that. I do think that's high.
I don't think that there's a wide receiver in this draft class that is elite wide receiver in the same conversation as Jamar Chase was.
Okay, I agree, and I agree.
And I think with a grade over 90, you've got a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
And for me, like, these guys aren't top 10 picks. But for me, Quentin Johnston, my knock on him is a little bit of the route running. He's sloppy at times when it comes to route running. He's slow at times when it comes to route running. And yes, his height is the big thing that everyone's looking at, and that he's a mismatch. But he's a mismatch in the college game. He's not a mismatch in the NFL game and now I know TCU was slaughtered by Georgia in the final, but Quentin Johnston was held to one catch for 3 yards. That's because Kelly Ringo is also 6'2", and you're going to see a lot more of that in the NFL. He's going to have to go against guys like Sauce Gardner, Tariq Woolen. More corners are just getting bigger and bigger. So the wide receiver being 6'2", 6'3" is not actually proving to be as much of a mismatch in the NFL game. Going against someone like Kelly Ringo, who is, I believe, the exact same size, height, weight, everything, and I think Kelly Ringo's faster. I don't see how he's going to survive that in the NFL. I think he has the tools to do it, but as of right now, I can't make him my number 1 because I don't think he's going to succeed at what he did in college in the NFL unless he changes it a little bit.
I agree, and again, these are obviously all of our rankings are subject to change, so I'm definitely going to go back because I do agree that 94 is a little high. I have a value on him as a top 20 pick. I do think this guy, could go in the top 10, but again, I think there are some receivers. Like the rankings don't. Like, I think I agree that Addison will probably get taken before him, but that's our 1. So I have Quentin Johnson. We're going based on my list, so I have Quentin Johnson at 1. You have him at 2. But my 2 is not actually Jordan Addison. My 2 is Zay Flowers. So you have Zay
Flowers at 5.
Okay, so let's talk about Zay Flowers. So again, I really like this dude, and he's the top receiver of the small guys in this draft. You look at, there are a ton of like 5'9", 5'8" receivers, but he's 5'9", 182. I don't know if you saw. I think the NFL or someone posted just his transformation so far in the draft. Like he went from like 170 to 182. Like he's gotten big. Obviously 22-year-old senior from Boston College, but this dude's route running is fantastic, especially deep. Like this guy has incredible route running, really good hands, durability after the catch. He's fantastic, and he's a really shifty guy. Like he's really good. You'll see the smaller receivers here, like Jaden Reed, who I'm really high on out of MSU, Tank Dell, like the hezzy steps in the route where it makes that corner that one step slower. He's really good at creating separation. I really like Zay Flowers. I think he's a durable guy. I think he's someone who you can plug and play, and I think he'll be very successful. His tracking over the shoulders like Antonio Brown. I have my comp as Antonio Brown. Obviously, that's very out there, but I really like Zay Flowers. I would love if the Giants could take him. Obviously, after losing Kadarius Toney, I think the Ravens would be a really good fit. I think the Seahawks would be a really good fit. I just really like him. I think this guy is a talent who's going to be electric. I think he's going to cause a lot of defense problems, and especially if you get a quarterback who has accuracy and strength downfield, this guy will be an absolute weapon for wherever he's drafted.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my comp for Zay Flowers, I have him at 5. With a grade of 86. So
yeah, and I have him at a 90.
My 1 to 5 is 89 to 86. So they're all very close.
Yeah.
I don't dislike Zay Flowers at all. I actually really like Zay Flowers. My comp for him is Wan'Dale Robinson.
Okay.
I think it's a very similar type player.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not so keen on the Giants taking him in the first round because we've already got Wan'Dale Robinson.
Right, that's a good point.
And we just signed Paris Campbell. I think very similar players. And the biggest thing that I dislike about Zay Flowers is I think a lot of us were expecting him to run better at the combine. I think he ran a 4.42 at the combine, and he was saying he was trying to run some like low 4.3s.
Yeah,
and he sets everyone's expectations up here, and then 4.42 is a very good time.
Like it's super fast,
but it's not that fast. It's not he's not game breaking speed. And I think there are, one guy I have above him, I won't get into it yet, but one guy I've got above him does have game-breaking speed.
Yeah.
And that's why I've got him there. And I think Zay Flowers is a very good prospect. He's a great route runner. You said it. He is potentially the best route runner in this class if it weren't for Jordan Addison. Mm-hmm. But for me, I have him at 5 because I just don't think that the spots, again, it's kind of similar to Quentin Johnson. I don't think the spots that he thrived on in the college game will translate as well to the NFL game with 4.42 speed.
Yeah. There we go. We'll move on now to my 3, where I have Jordan Addison, and he is your 1.
He's my 1.
Where I completely understand. I think my top 3 are very subject to change. I actually think this wide receiver class is I don't think anybody has a same top 5. The top 5. I think there are so many good receivers in this class, but I have Jordan Addison. Obviously, again, a guy who was supposed to be 6 foot, clocked in at 5'11", 173. So he's a thinner guy. You look at Zay Flowers, who's 2 inches shorter and about 10 pounds heavier. So he's definitely a thinner guy. Jordan Addison would have been the wide receiver 1, and there would have been a cliff to the next guys if he had the same production he did at Pitt. Yeah. Last year, obviously, he was incredible with Kenny Pickett last year, and I think I've known about this guy for so long, and because when we were scouting for Kenny Pickett, he's throwing to Jordan Addison 50% of the time. Yeah. This guy's fantastic. You look at route running. Actually, we'll get into who I have as my top route runner in the class, but I think, again, right there with the best route runner in the class, really good vertically. He's just he's a great receiver. You look at what he was really good after the catch. He's just a highlight reel, waiting to happen. You look at the Jamar Chases like that. He was a highlight reel waiting to happen. Really good athlete, very refined player at USC. Was a big reason that Caleb Williams was so successful. It's just the production wasn't there as much this year. I'm not huge on him. You look at him in press coverage, this guy can get deleted from plays. He's a little skinny. He can get on press. He gets kind of shoved out of the play. And again, his 40 speed, I think, was 4.48, 4.49, which isn't
not,
super fast. But he's not that kind of guy. He's not a burner downfield.
No.
He's a route technician who's going to create space and get catches, which I love. I don't need a guy who's super good downfield. He's definitely a more polished receiver. And I think when you look at a comp, I like Devontae Smith, but also I think Stephon Diggs is a really good comparison. We know how successful he is. They're not guys who they can obviously get deep and they can gash a defense downfield, but also they're
more with
a route
technician. Ability.
That's what they're good at. Exactly. So that's what I have. I think the Giants would be a great fit for Jordan Addison. I think out of all the receivers, they're the guy you would want the most. And then I have Ravens and Seahawks. A lot of teams that need receivers. So those are my what I think about Jordan Addison. I really like him. But obviously you have him at your 1, so you take it away here.
Yeah, this is, and it's a hard one because I don't think Addison is a true wide receiver 1 in a class because I think we've seen better receiver classes in the last few years, and this one, It's a little deeper and more consistent in the first round, but there's no top end guy.
Yeah.
And I think for me, if I had to choose one, it is Jordan Addison. I think Devonta Smith is actually a really good comparison. I think we've seen Devonta Smith is not the tallest of guys, plus he's very skinny, ran just around a 4.5 40. But Devonta Smith burns people. It's with his route running ability, and I think Jordan Addison has that ability. He's the best route runner in the class, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he's there.
I don't see many faults in Jordan Addison's game. You mentioned the one, and that's press coverage. He's tough to play press coverage, or he's very easy to play press coverage against once you can get your hands on him. He's gonna make it hard for you to get your hands on him because he's so good. His footwork is so good, but once you've got your hands on him, he's small, he's slight. You can take him out of plays. We've seen it happen with Devonta Smith.
Exactly.
He's gotten a lot better with it. He's gotten more physical and running through corners. And if Jordan Addison can make that step, I think he can be just as good as Devonta Smith and playing a Super Bowl. I think this is a very good wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think I agree with your point just about the wide receivers. I think most of these guys are high end, maybe besides Quentin Johnson because of his size, are like high end wide receiver twos. Like we saw, that's what Devontae Smith is in the NFL, and he's fantastic. So that's what I think these guys are, but it's really deep. So I think each time we have, like, you look at all of the NFL drafts, like a position class will either be very top heavy or deep and very and I think you kind of take it. I actually really like the depth. Like, I like when you have depth.
Yeah.
But we'll move on now to 4, where I have Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee, a guy who people either don't have in their top 5 or have him really high. You're one of the guys that have him high up in your. So you have him at 2, or you have him at 3. Excuse me. But I really like Jalen Hyatt. I think again the whole question mark. Sorry, we're just trying to get the charger so Charlie's computer doesn't die. The whole question mark with Jalen, or excuse me, not question mark. The whole thing with Jalen Hyatt is the speed. Like, this guy is so fast and so much faster, I guess, than a lot of these receivers. Like, this guy, what was his 40? 4.2?
Not in the 2s. I think it was just shy. I think it was.
I thought it was 4.2s. All right, whatever, low 3s. But this guy will be drafted.
4.4.
No, was it really a 4?
It's one of the players who, a lot of the players this happens to, his game tape is so much faster.
Yeah, so
there's no corner in college or in the NFL who's just gonna be able to run with him.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be hard. You're not gonna want to play this guy in press coverage.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is the fastest player in the class.
Yeah, yes.
Like, out of all of them, like, fastest player. This guy's an elite, vertical threat. That's what he's going to be drafted for, to be a guy speed downfield. And he also has a size, like 6 feet, 176. Again, like a guy who is slight, I guess, but also taller, not like a 5'9" guy who you generally see as the game breakers downfield. But
he's an outside receiver,
yeah.
And he's gonna burn with that speed, and I think he could end up being a really, really good player.
Yeah, and I don't think he's the kind of guy who doesn't have a ton of holes. The production was there. Like, he's, again, a guy who I don't have a grade below a B. I think this guy will be very, very good. I have him at an 88. I have him at an 88. I have Addison at 88.5, and I have Zay Flowers as a 90. So they're all very close. But again, he wasn't a guy who wasn't at the Senior Bowl, so we haven't seen him kind of face up, I guess, recently against NFL talent. But and I guess the one thing that you look at with Jalen Hyatt is he had, like, no tape against press coverage, where I think is, for me, when you look at a receiver, is super important. He only had 18 snaps against press coverage, and in those he only had 1 catch. So that might be a problem where we look at it with Jordan Addison, where he might just get deleted from plays. But this guy's a West Coast offense type of guy. He will be fantastic. He's very good after the catch, really elusive. I think this guy will be drafted to be a deep threat, and this guy is rapid. But you have him at your 3, so you have him one spot above.
I think that Jalen Hyatt, you mentioned he only had 18 snaps against press coverage. I actually think that's a really good thing in a lot of ways. I think it means, teams are scared of him and they don't want him to burn deep, because he doesn't have one route, right? He can do a few things, and when you play a guy with that kind of speed and press coverage, if he gets the step on you, it's a touchdown every single time. And I think that's what's going to make a lot of teams nervous. I think his route running ability combined with his speed. Now, he's not one of the best route runners in the class, but he's not one of the worst. He knows what he's doing out there. And with top end speed that he has, I know he only ran a 4.4, but with that kind of top end speed, he's not going to be facing much more press coverage in the NFL unless it's against guys who are.
But I feel like he might, because he can get corners. Like, I think when you look at, like, the corners, like, you go up against a guy like Tariq Woolen, like, I think stride for stride, like, he'll be able to keep the length.
Tariq Woolen is probably the one big exception, because Tariq Woolen is the only mix of size and speed like that we've ever seen.
Yeah,
at
that's
6'4", runs a sub 4.3. It's Tariq Woolen is a different kind
And
of
I don't know
corner.
if, and obviously, you watch tape on Jalen Hyatt, like you see, like they run like a weird stack at Tennessee, like they stack it, like, and again, it's not like that's unheard of in the NFL, but it's just they ran that a lot.
But
So
think
I want
any
the route
offense-
tree to definitely get
I think
expanded.
any offense that operates with Jalen Hyatt is going to change their scheme just a little bit, because changing a scheme for a guy who can get you touchdowns is something that
Yeah.
happens. And I think if you line him up just a couple yards off the line of scrimmage with a receiver in front of him, it's going to be harder to press him.
Yeah,
And I think if they're going to try and play press coverage and he's 2 yards off the line of scrimmage, it's going to be a touchdown.
yeah. And although I don't have him as high as some of these guys, I think he's a guy who could be a true wide receiver 1. Whereas I feel like Addison might. Again, I think all these guys can be. That's why they're top prospects. But I do think Jalen Hyatt, like definitely when you look at him, could be. But yeah, I mean, I think this guy's gonna be fantastic. We'll move down to where I'm sure all these people are wondering, where's Jackson Smith and Jigba? And here he is. So I have him at my 5. You have him at your 3. 4. I don't like Jackson Smith and Jigba that much. I think he's a good receiver. He is a very high floor. You know what you're getting. This guy's gonna be productive, but nowhere near the best release in the class, nowhere near the best route runner in the class. This guy knew how to sit down in zones, get catches, pretty good at separation. I have I have him at not very fast. I just don't love him. I think he was very, and again, I don't love saying this, but I think the tape shows it so much when you look at it last year with like the stats he had. Like, yeah, it's undeniable. He was absolutely fantastic in the Rose Bowl, but I think he was a big benefactor of, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson next to him.
I mean,
So-
he outshined them both.
Yeah, I know,
With
but I feel like
1,600 yards.
I agree, but I think that was because people they're giving their best corners to Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. I do like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think this guy is a first-round pick. I think he'll be a good receiver, but I think the upside for him isn't as great. I just didn't love him as much. Like I think he's
agree.
super smart. He understands zone. He understands man. I wasn't like, wow. Like that's Ohio State, one of the best receivers we've seen in the past 10 years. Like he's up there. I just don't think he's up there with Olave, with Garrett Wilson, with Jalen Waddle, Jamar
Yeah,
Chase.
for sure. No, the way I like to put it with Smith and Jigba is there's everything to like about this guy, but there's nothing to love about him.
Exactly.
He's you said it. He's you know what you're getting. He's going to be a good receiver, but will he be a great receiver? Will he turn into?
I think he could be though.
Chris Olave, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson. Who knows? It's possible, but I think there's less of a chance of that than some of the other guys that we have before.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just, again, Jackson Smith and Jigba, like, again, there's not many holes, but there's not that eliteness,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
nowhere near the best route running, and like I said, best release. Like he's a little bit slow, but again, I would say he's the smartest receiver in this class. Like, he understands zones. He understands how to find the gaps in zones and get past man coverage. He's good after the catch. Obviously, we saw that in the Rose Bowl why he was so successful, but again, I think it all depends where he gets drafted to. I would really like the Jaguars. And again, a lot of people have him like to Chris Godwin. I think Godwin's a little more of a threat per se. I think he's a little better after the catch, but I think Chris Godwin, was the closest comp I could come to Smith and Jigba. He's an elite wide receiver too, and I think Jigba could be an elite wide receiver too. And in no way, you know me. We've been doing draft analysis together for the past 3 years. If I don't like a prospect, I will hate on him. I will not like them.
Oh yeah.
But
Dropped him to 55.
dropped him to
on the big board,
55.
something
Who
that.
was it last year? Which quarterback was it last year? I forgot.
I don't remember.
But it was Mac Jones, who I hated. So I am not afraid to say my opinion, but I do think Jigba definitely has some stuff there. Good size, 6'1", 196. Like definitely not a skinny dude. So I do like him there, but that's our top 5 receivers. Again, we'll just go over it again. I'll go over my 5 just to kind of wrap it up. So I have Quentin Johnson at 1, Zay Flowers at 2, Jordan Addison at 3, Jalen Hyatt at 4, and Jackson Smith and Jigba at 5. And we have our top 10 also, but just for the sake
and
of...
then for my 5, I've got Addison, Johnston, Hyatt, Smith and Jigba, and Flowers. I think it's the same 5 guys.
Yeah, same
They're
5 guys.
They're all really close. I think
Yeah.
we can both.
Although
say
I
it.
love Tank
all
Dell.
5 of them are very close. But
Yeah.
this
we have it. But if you guys, again, we could do more. We'll obviously talk a ton of drafts, so we'll get into the other receivers. But